All right. Welcome back, everybody. You know what I love? I love that before we're even live today, the chat is already going. You guys are pumped up to be here today, and I'm sure glad that you are here with us at the Devils Rink Report. What's going on, everybody? My name is James Nichols, New Jersey Devils reporter, and your host via the Devils Rink Report. And this is the Friday, February 27th edition of Devils Rink Report. We're already near March. Next week, the trade deadline, which is why we're having my guest today, David Pagnotta of the fourth period, the DFO Rundown Insider Edition. He'll be with us shortly. When he's standing by. Producer Sean will let me know. And Sonic says we are live. That sounds familiar. It's not this show. It's another show that we know with our friend of Ryan Novozinski over at Speaking of the Devils. But yes, we are we are in fact live. I guess we're gonna borrow that gimmick for the day. And guys, welcome to today's show. We have a lot to talk about because the Olympic break is over, and the best indicator of it being over is all of you already here and chatting already, because I think everybody wanted to take a bit of a mental break, and I get that, right? Everybody was trying to take some time away from talking about and watching the Devils and just enjoying the show at the Olympic world level, it was some of the best hockey that we have seen. And actually, this is the first show that I'm having since the Olympics wrapped up. And we could talk a little bit about that too, right? Obviously, Jack Hughes, the game winning golden goal against Canada to bring home the gold to the United States. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I'm not going to lie, guys. I'm a total, when it comes to the Olympics, right? Obviously, I didn't get to go this year. I would love to go, but I didn't get to go this year. And I sat home and I covered, the things I had to cover, but I took a little bit of time off, some necessary time off. But total fan. I was a total fan. Of course, you know, also doing my objective analysis and of the Devils players. But I was a total fan of the Olympics and that entire tournament. Had so much fun watching Team USA just make their way to the championship game and then ultimately winning it. But also, it was such great hockey all around. Like, I really enjoyed watching Slovakia and seeing what Simone Nemec could do. I really enjoyed watching Switzerland and watching Timo Meyer get back to that form that we all kind of hope that he could have one day. Breaking news, not Devils related. Tyler Seguin's declared out for the year, so that clears up some cap room for the Dallas Stars. I kind of have been talking about this hunch that I've had about a certain defenseman on the Devils who would be a good fit for the Dallas Stars. We'll talk about that a little bit later, especially with our guest, by the way, David Pagnotta of the fourth period and DFO Rundown Insider Edition. Um, but yeah, the Olympics were great, and just to see Jack Hughes, elevate himself, and look, hand up, right? I said this when it happened. I said this a couple days after it happened, right? I was a critic of Jack going into the games. I certainly watched Jack leave. I don't want to call him a boy, but he left not a man, and he did return a man. I truly feel that. I mean, the way he handled himself in the games, he forced his way up the lineup, led Team USA in goals, was a huge factor, not just in the deciding game, but in the entire tournament. I mean, to go from the four nations the way he did to the Olympics and make that big of an impact, that big of a difference from how he was playing a year ago in that tight, close quarters physical game. He figured out a way around that this year. And in a smaller game, right? The ice was 3 feet smaller. So it was just a really good showing from Jack at the Olympics. Obviously, he gets rewarded with that golden goal. Jack Hughes is not just a New Jersey star now. He's an international superstar. Obviously, on the Pat McAfee show today, he's going to be on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. And he's making his rounds everywhere. He's all over, and everybody knows who Jack Hughes is now. The toothless, bloodied Jack Hughes, who is the American hero for scoring that game-winning goal. And my guest standing by is not the biggest fan of the golden goal from from north of the border here. But David Pagnotta of the fourth period and DFO Rundown Insider Edition joins me now. And I couldn't be happier to have you back, David. Welcome, and
Mm-hmm.
condolences on the loss. Condolences on the loss. I feel for
Thank
you,
you.
but
Yeah,
it is certainly a good time to be a United States hockey fan,
it should be. It should be gold in the women's, gold in the men's,
isn't it?
world championship in May.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, look, Canada had plenty of opportunities to close things out, didn't pull it off. U.S. did, and they won, deservingly so.
Yeah.
You gotta close. So they didn't do it. U.S. did. Good for you guys. You pulled it off. Celebration has been awesome. I don't know everybody's bitching and complaining for how long.
Right.
I mean, I would be half in the bag too for a few days if I won an Olympic gold medal like this. So good on him, and good for Jack. And he's got enough money. He'll fix that
Oh
front
yeah.
line. He'll be okay.
Yeah, quick aside before we get into the devil stuff. What do you make
Yeah.
of this narrative that a lot of people, a lot of Canadian fans are saying, oh, you only won because of Connor Hellebuck. What is this misconception that the goaltender is not part of the team, that you can't win the game morally without, having a hot goaltender.
I mean, we got goalied. Like it happens. I mean, Connor Hellebuck didn't stop the wide open net that Nate McKinnon
Right.
missed. So I don't know. Like, you want to go back to Four Nations when Jordan Binnington made ridiculous save after ridiculous save,
Yeah.
and Canada won because of that. A big part of it because of that. So he's on the team. He's part of it. I don't know. I don't subscribe to that narrative. Helly good, hella good.
Yeah.
And it's we can use whatever excuse we wanted. We had an opportunity to close things out again, didn't do it. Same on the women's side, couldn't get it done, and you take advantage of it, and good on you. You got 2 goals because of it.
Yeah, certainly was a performance of a lifetime, and I think that just sealed his Hall of Fame future, Connor Hellebuck. But all right, let's focus on New Jersey, and obviously the trade deadline is 1 week away. Let's start here because I know what they should do, David. Obviously, the Devils are not in playoff position, and it is not
Mm-hmm.
likely that they're going to crawl their way back out of this hole. Five
They
straight
won't.
losses. They won't. What's your sense, though, of what the Devils might do at the deadline? Because it doesn't seem necessarily clear given their position, in their trajectory as an organization. Are they going to be buyers? Are they going to be sellers? Like how do they navigate this?
I think they look at this and are looking at this with next season in mind. Get a head start on getting this team back on track in the right direction, where a lot of people, myself included, expected them to be top 3 team in the division, to get to that level properly. And why not get a head start now? If there's opportunities to make those deals now, okay, cool, go for it. You're way too far back in the playoff spot. You're basically going to have to play 800 hockey, the way the Devils are situated. That's ridiculously unlikely. So, by all accounts, this season's a write-off. And look, you don't want injuries to be the excuse, but they factored in. It's the nature of the beast. They factored in again this season, unfortunately, with Jack's injury playing a big part of it. But why not get a head start on firming up your club for next season now, where you can get some business done in the next 7 days? You can focus on stuff around the draft. The free agent pool isn't overly deep. So and this is in New Jersey. I think there are other teams, or exclusive to New Jersey, I think there are other teams that are looking at this as well, going, we have an opportunity to focus on next season a little bit sooner than normal. And they're doing it because primarily the free agent pool is shallow. You're going to have to look at other ways to improve your hockey club. So take advantage of it now. I think that's where the mindset is. If there's another piece to sell off, if they can move Dougie Hamilton or do some other bit of business, I'm sure they're going to look at that, continue to look at that. But in terms of adding, I don't see any issue where they do anything now that's going to be detrimental to how they approach the rest of the offseason.
So that's certainly in Fitzgerald's DNA, right? We've seen him do that before, get a head start on what he might do in the summer. He did that with Jake Allen. That was an acquisition that he made that was gonna, solidify the goaltending. Obviously, we know how it went this year, but he's been great. And other
Yeah.
moves he's made in the past before have been for future endeavors, right? Here's my thing though. there is some chatter about who's steering the ship, right? Is Fitzgerald going to last past this season? Is he going to be in control at the deadline? Is he going to have to go back to ownership and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, and they're going to have to green light it? Who's steering the ship here? And is Fitzgerald, is he going to be around much longer?
I haven't really been given any indication, and I haven't looked into this recently. But let's say prior to Olympics, I haven't been given any indication that he's not the guy still running the ship. Um, when you've got mega dollars that you've got to factor in terms of acquisition, there's always a call above. That goes for pretty much every team. If you're going to bring in $50 million or whatever it is, I just got to clear this. So that's normal business. They're going to say, do you think it's worth it? He's going to say yes. And then they're going to say, okay, cool, fine, we'll do it. That's just the hierarchical structure of pretty much any professional sports team. Unless, the owner is directly involved in those decisions, Dallas Cowboys, then you don't have to make that call, right? And Carolina to an extent, because Tom Dundon's pretty hands-on. But for the most part, that's just normal practice. So don't get it misconstrued that if that happens, that, he's not the main guy, or another team and that their GM isn't the main guy, because that's just normally how things go. But in terms of shaping this club and moving forward, as far as I know, as far as I can tell, it's still Fitzy's job. And maybe they evaluate things in the summer. But again, the injuries that factor in, you haven't seen what this team is capable of over a full 82, because they haven't been together for a full 82 for the last couple of seasons. And as frustrating as that is for a lot of fans, that's just the cards that you've been dealt. So how much longer that goes, okay, you have some other questions that will come in, but these are two unfortunate seasons. And who the hell would have expected Jack to get injured in the way he did?
Yeah, certainly the injuries are a factor for sure. But one of the questions I have about how the season went is Sheldon Keefe by an extension on the hot seat as well, depending on what happens here with Fitzgerald. Like, do you see him lasting past this season as well? Because it just seems like he's not having the Devils play to their strengths as a speed skill team on the rush. And he's been pretty adamant about, having this defensive structure, which for good reasons, of course, but it just seems like they're not built for his system. I mean, is he another guy who they're going to have to evaluate and look at and say he might not be back next season either?
Well, his style, yes, it's different, and it may not be the most opportunistic for some of his players to play under that system. But at the same time, offensively, this team has struggled. Secondary scoring has been a huge struggle for this team. Certain guys on this team that expected to produce more offensively haven't been able to do it. So when you're trying to compete and you're the coach, you've got to adjust based on your strengths. And if you feel like, hey, man, we're really having a hard time scoring here, if we continue to focus on that, we may, leave opportunities for the other team to bite us in the butt. So we have to be a little bit more sound defensively until these guys can get going. It's a catch-22, because if you're doing that, you're not giving them necessarily the most opportunity to score or to exploit their talents in the right way. But when you've got guys like Jack and Timo Meier and Jesper Bratt and so on, Dawson Mercer, they should be able to produce even under that system. Overall, it hasn't worked. So you've got to find the right pieces in place. Nico Hischier as well. You've got to find the right pieces in place that gel, that can complement a bit of a defensive structure while also taking advantage of the offensive weapons that you have. And clearly, because of the lack of secondary scoring and overall questions surrounding the offense, those types of answers come from up top, and it's up to Fitzgerald to find the right remedy and to give the right pieces in place for the coaching staff to work with.
Certainly. And chat, you're listening to David Pagnotta of the Fourth Period and the DFO Rundown Insider Edition. We have a super chat here from Sonic9123 addressed to you, David, and he says, good to have you back. As reported, Tom Fitzgerald may want to make a big shakeup trade. Who could you see traded to shake them up? Meaning, who would the Devils potentially think about removing, maybe as part of the core?
Well, I've heard Dawson's Mercer a few times throughout the season from other teams. So that could always be those teams going, yeah, throw his name out there because we want to try to make something work. But they also view certain players throughout the league as targets. And I think Dawson Mercer is one of them. What type of appetite Fitzy and the crew have to move him, I'm not sure. But you look at the way the roster is shaped up, and you look at some of the no trade clauses with some of the bigger boys, it's not easy to pull the trigger on a variety of these types of deals. So with Mercer, with where he's at, I mean, this would be a bigger deal. You're talking about a pretty significant type of trade that I would imagine would bring in a pretty significant player if you're dealing, a guy like Dawson Mercer. So I think it's a little premature right now to make that type of move, but we'll see. We'll see what kind of pops up. I know Stamkos has been a player that they've circled around since November. And I think there's a bit of an appetite to explore that again, and his name started to pop up this week again with respect to the Devils. But we'll see what direction they ultimately go in. That's the type of player that they want to play with Jack, and he'd likely be slotted on that right side. But we'll see if that builds any momentum over this next week.
Yeah, that's an interesting name that you put out there, too, because there was talk that, Nashville had looked at Dawson Mercer as a guy who they believed would be a good fit for them as well. And listen, guys, if anybody has any other questions for David, just, be sure to get your questions in here. If you want to get to the front of the line, some super chats, throw them in there as well. But I got another name for you here. There was some questions about obviously what's going to happen with Dougie Hamilton, right? The reports earlier in the year of they were sitting him for performance reasons. The agent came out, that got a little messy, but he was really good after that got a little messy. And now obviously the NHL schedule has resumed. But could you see them making this deal happen at the deadline? Is this maybe more of a summer thing? Is there still? I mean, I know that the chatter around that kind of quieted down, but is this gonna be something that happens sooner than later?
It depends on what the return is and where the Devils view the opportunity cost to make that move now. Because he has, and correct me if I'm wrong on the number, it's at 7.4, 7.5, 7 something bonus that kicks in July 1. I believe.
I believe that's right.
Something along those lines. So, he had his big bonus paid out July 1 last year for this season. He's got a final bonus payment due July 1. And there's no bonus on the final year of his contract. There may be some teams that look at this and go, yeah, we'll give you X, Y, and Z, but I'll do it on July 2nd because I want you to pay that. I don't want to be on the hook for it. Or there are teams going, all right, we'll make this move now, but we'll give you X and Y. We're not giving you Z because we got to pay that 7, whatever it is, bonus on July 1. Or we'll give you ABC instead of X, Y, Z, whatever. Anyway, the parameters change when you're dealing with that type of bonus money and the time of year. So it really comes down to just what direction New Jersey is most comfortable in, and then kind of going from there. I still think there's interest in Dougie Hamilton, but again, you're going to have to evaluate, if you're the Devils, what the opportunity cost is to move him now versus paying that bonus and maybe getting a little bit extra in return to pull that off.
Certainly, and I think that you were right. He's got his total salary this year is 8.4. So you're right. The $7.4 million signing bonus is due on July 1. That's right. We got another super chat here for you. It kind of puts you a little bit on the spot here. So if you answer as you can, but from Zach Shin, he says, "Hi Dave. Any hunches about Quinn extending in Minnesota?"
Still early. Still very early on that front. I will say this: I don't think Minnesota's making that trade without having a decent idea that they have a good shot at signing. That's what I believe. That's what other people have suggested to me as well. Can't sign anything until later anyway, so it's kind of a moot point to a certain extent. But at this point, I'd be a little bit surprised if that doesn't come to fruition.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I would be real surprised too. Bill Guerin is a very convincing man, and I
Yeah.
don't think anybody's taking anything away from him. Another question for you here. This one's from me, but any others on the Devils? You mentioned Dawson. We talked about Dougie. Any other
Mhm.
names that you're looking at in New Jersey that you could see potentially on the move? I think of a guy in Cody Glass, and I wonder, is that a guy the Devils are prepared to move on from? Obviously, they brought in Nick Bukestad a couple weeks ago. I thought
Right.
that was an interesting move. Maybe that's the 3C replacement. Cody Glass is on a 20-something goal pace at a favorable cap hit. Is there any other guys that we should be looking at here that New Jersey is probably going to be or going to try to move on from to bring something in?
And I'm just pulling up the roster right now just to make sure that I've got it in front of me. I haven't, to be honest, the short answer is no. I haven't heard additional names as potentials in terms of moving out, because I don't know if there's a major appetite to sell off necessarily. I think it's more so geared towards situational deals that affect this team next season and on, that can improve them next season and on. So, whether it's Cody Glass with another year on his contract at 2.5 or another piece, I don't really see the urgency to make those types of sell-off type moves. Again, unless it helps your team next season and on, I think that's the priority that they will explore. If somebody comes to them and says, I want player X, and the combo works and it's going to improve, or at least optically it looks like it'll improve them next season, I think that's, again, where the priorities are for Fitzy and the Devils.
And last one here for you, and then I'll let you go and get on with your busy day. I know you were on the radio all day today. I saw you were Jeff before. You're here now.
All over the place. It's been
busy time for you. Busy time. I'll probably be chewing your ear off at some point later in the day too. But listen, despite likely selling, right? The Devils they're in a precarious position. They could bring someone in like you've alluded to. This being a potential bigger picture move, who are some names you're looking at out there that would be a fit for New Jersey that you could see making sense that they would go for as part of that future that you're talking about, preparing for next season?
I think the priority is finding somebody that's going to play on Jack's right side.
Right.
And so whether that's Stamkos or, and I don't know if they've checked it, I'm just dropping this name because of Jordan Kyrou. Right winger, player that the Blues are listing on, a player who is willing to have or is open to a change of scenery. Like, those are the types of players that I would look at. Somebody that Connor Garland in Vancouver, somebody that plays the right side, can mesh well with Jack up the middle and probably Bratt on the left side. That's how I would look at it. And I think that's priority for them. Look at the rest of the roster. You want to obviously, again, add more offense to this group. But I think, there's, a couple priorities. One, later on in the summer, they're going to want to know where things are at with Nico Hischier and the captain, obviously. But in terms of adding, I think the priority is finding somebody that can slot on the other side of Jack. And that's where I think the focal point will be in terms of impact additions.
We got one more here for you that slid through last minute, Dave. It's from at Steve_Chaos. If Fitz is let go, who would be a strong candidate to right the ship? Obviously, that would be a summer thing. I think of names like maybe Sonny Mehta over in Florida. John Chaika, I think, wants to get involved again. Who are some names that maybe you would think of in the management sphere who might want to maybe take this job in New Jersey if it's available?
Well, now you're going to battle Nashville because they're looking for a GM as well with Trotz retiring. I still think even that one I think is a little premature. I think they've realized or started to recognize some potential candidates that they'd like to talk to, some AGMs that are out there that are, on the cusp. Some of these guys that are next in line, so to speak. You saw Matthew Darsh go from AGM in Tampa, become the GM or on the island. I can certainly see them going in that direction where they're looking at someone who's been around for a while, who's studied the game in different facets, in different parts of the management structure, and you want to bring in somebody in that regard. If that ends up being the case, I could probably see them going in that type of direction. In terms of names, I think it'd be it's a little early, obviously, because they haven't made that decision, and I don't expect them to right now. But if they do go in that direction, it wouldn't shock me because I know Nashville is going in this way as well in terms of looking at some experienced management types that have been there that are probably next in line. So whether it's a Madden or a Yannetti or whomever, there are a number of others, Horkoff and so on, Rich Peverly, so on and so on. There are going to be some of these guys that are going to start being given consideration for those types of roles moving forward.
Could you see Brendan Shanahan?
I don't think Shanny wants a GM role. I think if there's a president of hockey ops type thing, I think he'd like to go back into that type of role. I don't think GM is overly attractive to him in terms of that. I don't know if he has an appetite for that. I do know that even before Nashville made their announcement that Trotz is going to retire once they find a new GM, earlier on in the season, he had reached out to Nashville to say, hey, if you are looking to make any types of moves, if you are looking to bring in somebody at the top of the totem pole in terms of hockey ops and running that department, it's something I'd like to consider. So I've got to imagine that if that role opens up, not just with the Preds or the Devils or whomever, that I'd see him throwing his hat in the ring for that type of position.
Dave, you're the best. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. And if you're out later with Alberga, keep that guy in line, huh?
It's hard to do. Sometimes I just walk away, but I let him do his thing. But I'll do my best.
Thanks, Dave. Talk soon.
See you, buddy.
That's Dave Pagnotta of the Fourth Period. Join me today on the Devil's Rink Report podcast. And you can check his work out at the Fourth Period. You can follow him on Twitter at the Fourth Period, and you can listen to him on at the DFO Rundown Insider Edition podcast. Everybody who contributed to the chat, super chats, thank you so much. We're eternally grateful. Kind of had to get a quick expedite on that, so I couldn't individually thank you, but I'll thank you now because Dave had to. Dave is out and he's going on with his day. But I want to say thank you to those who have contributed already. We're 3/4 of the way to our goal. I know it says 2/4 of the way to our goal, but we got one before I think the goal was created. So we're actually 3/4 of the way to our goal. So thank you for the 3 super chats so far. Our goal is 5. So if you want to contribute, support local journalism, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. And if you just want to, regularly chat too, of course, we love that. And a lot of you guys here today, loving this so far. It's been a great episode so far. And thank you so much for being here and supporting our show. And if you haven't, I'd be remiss to say we're so close to hitting 1,000 subscribers. So please hit the sub button down below. And once we do hit 1,000, we will be on podcast platforms. So hit that sub button if you haven't already. Stay part of the community, and you can listen to us in your cars and not have to watch me if you. So please, because then you have to keep the YouTube app open on sometimes, right? And that's kind of annoying. I've been there. So hit that sub button. And let's get to 1,000 subscribers as soon as we can, right, guys? And listen, maybe there's more shows coming on the way. We're working on plans, by the way, for next week at the trade deadline. We're trying to figure out if we're going to do a show during or after. And if you guys want, let me know in the comments. Like, what would you prefer? Do you prefer once the buzzer is sounded and the trade deadline is over, a reaction show? Or are you into maybe during? And I'll try to see if I can get multiple guests to come in. Let me know what you guys think. You want a reaction show after or something during? I don't know if we can do both. Maybe we'll try to figure that out. But I know, there's going to be a lot going on that day. I'm going to have to do some writing and stuff. But we'll figure it out together, right? So let me know in the comments, and let producer Sean know. We'll take a poll here and try to figure out, do we want a during or do we want an after reaction podcast? We'll figure that out together. I think Sean actually might throw. I saw him react in the backstage. I think he might throw a poll up in there. So make sure to vote in the poll when it's there. But real quick too, we're gonna start our notes, and I think we're gonna, Sean, we'll put the Tankathon right after we talk about the first section here, so you can get that poll going. But some awesome stuff in general from Jack Hughes this week. An awesome message on Wednesday before the game when they returned from the Olympic break. Just how proud he was to, one, be an American, but two, how proud he was to be in New Jersey and represent the Devils. I thought that was a big moment for Jack because, like I said, I thought that he left a boy and returned from the Olympics a man after what he did to win that game and be part of that brotherhood. And that's what he's talked about nonstop, right? The brotherhood of the United States hockey family is so strong and it's so alive, and I think it's made him a more mature person. But he didn't have to go on about how much he loved representing New Jersey. He didn't have to go on about how much he loved being part of the Devils and calling himself their guy, right? He said, I think that I'm their guy. That's how I feel because um you know they took me first overall. I see 86 jerseys everywhere, and I love to, yell at the fans in a positive way. He went out the window when I'm driving to the arena, and he feels a real sense of loyalty to New Jersey. And look, I think that's really important for him to come out and get ahead of that and say that because. There's going to be a lot of discourse, this summer leading up to, whenever Quinn Hughes signs an extension in Minnesota, which, as you heard from Dave and, myself talking about, we're kind of in lockstep about thinking that is going to happen for Quinn in Minnesota. I think he's going to end up staying there at some point. That's just a hunch. I don't have anything to, tell me that or anyone telling me that's going to happen definitively yet. But it would be shocking at this point to see him not stay there. So you would probably get a little bit uncomfortable if Jack hadn't said, "I love the Devils organization. I love playing for Harrison Blitzer. I love playing for Tom Fitzgerald. I love being here and being part of New Jersey." I think he genuinely meant that. He did not need to say that, and he did. He went out of his way to do that. So I think you guys can certainly, find some comfort in what Jack Hughes said about being a Devil and loving it. Not only the love for Team USA, not only the love for the United States Brotherhood, but for playing for the Devils. I thought that was huge. I thought it was a great moment. And the Tage Thompson thing was awesome too. I did not expect him to bring Tage out. It was his moment with the organization that they were giving him. And it was just so cool and so mature of him to say, you know what? This is Tage's moment too. He was there and he didn't even hesitate. He brought him out right away. And it was a really cool moment. So really enjoyed that. And then, the game happened. And it was, oh, we're back to Devils hockey. They're boring. They're for some reason slow. They can't score. This is just abysmal hockey, right? Timo Meyer gets on the board in the first game against the Sabres, but ultimately the Sabres win in regulation, and that's their fourth loss in a row. And you're just banging your head against the wall because you just watched this exciting brand of hockey in Milan at the Olympics, and you were just loving all of that rivalry and that speed and that aggression. And then we come back to the NHL, we come back to New Jersey, and we just see them just drop that disappointing effort against the Sabres. And look, these are still look, the Devils, even though they might know that the season's over for them, they're never gonna give up, right? They're not a team like they're not to a man, not gonna sit there and say to themselves, I'm mailing it in. But they're also not digging as deep as they could to, try and pull out these wins. And they just certainly didn't on Wednesday, and then the day after in St. Louis, yesterday, or sorry, Thursday, and then the day after in St. Louis, which was yesterday. Um, they didn't pull that win out either. And I'm sorry, not St. Louis, in oh god, Pittsburgh without Sidney Crosby. They're in St. Louis tomorrow. A Sidney Crosby less Pittsburgh Penguins, who was a beatable team. They're a beatable team, and in the third period they just sunk within themselves. They got that game tying goal in the second period, but they just sunk them within themselves like they do every third period, and it's kind of discouraging to see because there is a there is you want to see, especially like we know the season's lost, but for next year, you want to know that this team has dogs in them to, make a push late in a game and try to, bring the score back to even. And you just didn't get that, and that's disappointing. So, and look, I don't blame Jack Hughes for it. He had the most minutes yesterday, even though he's been playing the most hockey out of anybody. So Jack Hughes certainly, couple weeks ago, I said I don't see him stepping up when they need him to. Certainly, my foot is in my mouth now because over the first two games back from the break, I think he's been great. He was a little slow in the first game back from break, but rightfully so. I mean, he probably had upwards of 2 hours of sleep in like the past 72 hours. And you could see the glow and you could see how excited he was to, be back, but how excited he was to be back in New Jersey and everything, but also the excitement he had coming from Milan and the celebrations and everything like that. But he got his feet under him later in the game, and the game against Pittsburgh, he was excellent. It's just that there was nobody around him that was that was really helping him, and that's a problem. Certainly a problem. My good friend Ryan Novozinski's in the chat, and he's telling me that I'm awful. Well, you know what, buddy? So are you. Right back at you. Love you, bud. All right. You know what was really encouraging to see? Like these are the things that you want to see down the line with the Devils, because again, like we said, we know they're not going to make the playoffs, but we want to see encouraging signs with certain players who we know are probably going to be here, right? Jacob Markstrom. He's most likely going to be here again next season. They're probably going to still try and have him be the number one goaltender. It's going to be Markstrom and Allen again. The thing with Markstrom was that I thought he was really strong against Pittsburgh, right? Allen got the first game. Markstrom got the second because Allen hadn't played in a while. I thought both goaltending performances were fine. Nothing against the goaltending. I thought they were both really good. The thing with Markstrom is that you saw in the Olympics when he got the nod for Sweden, he looked like himself again, and then he brought that swagger back with him when he played against the Penguins, who certainly didn't ease up on him. I mean, they had upwards of 30 something shots on him. And he was strong. He turned, he let in a couple what was it? He let in 3 goals, but I mean 33 saves on 36 shots, 917 save percentage. You take that. I thought he was really good that game. So that's an encouraging side. You want to see more of that from Markstrom down the line, because if anything, that's the most pressing need outside of a winger for Jack Hughes on the Devils, is to just get that goaltending straightened out. And if he could be himself again, if this was the off year for him, because he tends to do that year to year, great. Then next year, then they'll be okay. He'll be himself again. And then you kind of just have to worry about that last year on his contract. But if he could be himself again next year, and you could show a little bit of that, going down the line this year, and I don't know, maybe finally the Devils change the goaltending coach, and maybe I know a couple people suggested maybe they can get the Sweden's goaltending coach. That would be very interesting, because maybe he sparked something in him. Do I think the message is stale from Rogalski? Yeah, I do. I don't necessarily see him improving anybody. I think guys like Allen have come in and been good in spite of Rogalski, and Jacob Markstrom in the past. Well, it's only been one game, but he was good in spite of Rogalski, right? Maybe they need a new voice in the goaltending department to steer that ship, and I don't want to say develop, because these guys are 35, but just sharpen these guys' tools. So we'll see how it goes. But moving on here, um, 7 days until the deadline. Obviously, a disappointing season, and we spoke with Dave. It's gonna be, it's in Fitzgerald's DNA. We've seen him do this before, where he hasn't neither bought nor sold, but just adjusted. And if he's going to be the guy who's running the deadline, which it's most likely going to be him, maybe. And I spoke to Ryan about this. I've spoken to the wretched Ryan Novozinski. I've spoken to the dismal Daniel Amoya about this. Is Fitzgerald going to get the Don Sweeney treatment, where they're like, "Hey, fix this next summer, or you're done"? And we saw what Sweeney did, right? He fixed it. Look at the Bruins. They're not juggernauts like they used to be, but they're in the fight, and they look better. Is he going to get that from HBSE, and are they going to say fix this or you're done? It's possible. I'm not gonna rule it out. I'm kind of 50-50 on the fence here, whether he's is gone or not. I do know there was some chatter about other executives expecting that job to be available, and hey, if it is, then there's going to potentially be a whole different direction the Devils are going to go in here. But you do wonder, for immediately right now, next week, there's a trade deadline that's going to happen. What are they going to do? And what you could see is, like, David discussed with us earlier, some sort of action to, get a head start on next year and rebuilding. No, I shouldn't say rebuilding, retooling the roster to just come back and be a better team. And hopefully health persists. Hopefully Jack Hughes doesn't go missing for another 20 games due to injury. And hopefully they could just be maybe a shade of their former selves in 22-23. Now, can they do that under Sheldon Keefe? I'm not confident. Um, but at the same time, with a fully healthy roster and some, depth that is perhaps better than what they have this year. And I know we spoke about that coming into this season. The depth is going to be better with Gritsuk and Connor Brown, but it just hasn't been. Luke Glendening as a regular fourth line center only offered face-off draws. He didn't offer any offense. He only really offered some defensive reliability, but nothing else, right? So the depth scoring dried up. this year, and it really hampered the top guys. They struggled to get the offense going, and as a result, this is where we are now. The Devils are dead last, 32nd in the league in goals for per game. There, it's like 2.4. It's miserable. It's miserable. I've never seen a Devils team in the entire time I've been covering them this bad in the goal scoring department. We could talk about last year where they were scoring upwards of. I think last year was when the decline started. It was like over 2.5 goals a game, but it wasn't 32nd. It was like in the upper 20s, maybe in the teens. But the year before that, 3.5 goals a game, and that was like top five. It's shocking to see the dramatic fall off that the Devils have gone through this year. So, we'll see how the adjustments come. We'll see what players they bring in. The deadline is going to be super interesting. It's going to be really telling with the kind of moves that Fitzgerald makes, if he makes any, that whether he's going to be the guy in the summer making decisions or not. I think it's going to be very telling. And then, we have the factor to think about with Sheldon Keefe. Is he going to still be the guy moving the or controlling the bench? I think I did see Sean in the chat. Somebody asked if who I could see as a head coach replacement if Keefe is gone. And not sure if you covered this, but it's a super chat. Thank you, JMB32486, for the $5 super chat. Potential replacement for Sheldon Keefe. I really do wonder about Jay Woodcroft. I know he's a guy that he was interviewing with the Devils before Sheldon Keefe got the job. I think it actually came down to him and Keefe. And you look at what he did with the Oilers. I think that a lot of people felt when he was fired from Edmonton that he got dealt the short stick. I think that he could provide that high speed, high skill, run and gun type style that would fit the Devils. And of course, he would have to have the right tools. But Edmonton is not so unsimilar from the Devils, in which they have heavy. They're heavy up top with McDavid and Draisaitl and Hyman, but the depth is pretty thin. Not so different from New Jersey, and he had some success there with the Oilers. So you kind of wonder if he could do the same thing with potentially, hopefully, you would think that next year, they do address the things. Although we've been talking about that for a couple summers now, that the Devils address the needs that they have. So I could see a guy like Woodcroft. I don't know if I see Pete DeBoer coming back. I mean, I'm not going to say no, never say never. But would he want to? I'm not sure. I mean, maybe he would. Maybe he's familiar with the organization, so it would be maybe like a Lindy Ruff situation. I know it's not exactly apples to apples, but maybe Pete DeBoer is a guy who they look at, or maybe it's somebody new. Maybe it's somebody who's rising through the ranks of the NCAA. I know a couple of people wondered about a guy like Jay Pandolfo. I think it's too soon for him. But maybe it is somebody just completely new, a fresh set of eyes, somebody who hasn't been in the league before. I know somebody asked about John Tortorella after how he coached or helped assisted the Team USA roster. I don't know if he's the right fit for New Jersey and the way that they should be playing. But those are just a couple names that come to mind for me. Sean, let's pull up the Tankathon here. Just because, and I meant to ask this today, but I didn't ask him. And I do kind of wonder what the Devils are going to do with their first round pick. But if you ask me, I'm a Gavin McKenna guy. I have made that loud and clear. I don't think any of that off-ice debauchery should mean anything in terms of his draft stock. From what I've been told and people I've spoken to, he tried to get out of that situation. He tried to walk away from that situation. I think somebody honestly should have stepped up for him and handled that situation, and nobody did. I don't put that on him, because if somebody was coming at my mama, I would do the same thing. But I digress. I think Gavin McKenna has figured it out in the NCAA. There was some doubt in his ability, but now I think you're seeing a version of him who he's got it together. He was the consensus overall number one. I know Ivan Stenberg out of I think the Finnish league is making noise too, but I think McKenna is still the guy. And look, if the Devils by some stretch of the imagination, which actually is not it's not a stretch anymore. They're they're slated for the 7th overall pick in the 2026 NHL draft. Let's hit the sim lottery once or twice and see what happens here, Sean. Okay, first They dropped to eighth. All right, so they drop one. Let's try again. Oh man, Calgary wins again, and they stay seventh. All right. So look, let's just say you keep refreshing. Let's see how far we can get with them. Maybe jumping up in the draft. But if there is some way that there is just a little bit, oh God, the Rangers move up to two. Yikes. If there's some way the Devils could get a little bit of magic here and move up to number two or number one, and potentially get a guy like Stenberg or a guy like McKenna. I think that the Devils should certainly be holding on to this draft pick, unless um, something like a Jason Robertson slides across the table, right? Um, we'll see. I don't know if that's a possibility. I know that Dallas wants to extend him, but it's been a struggle there to get that done. So could they turn around and say, "Hey, like we'll deal you, this player for your draft pick. It's a top 10 pick." Certainly it could happen. Certainly it could. It looks like we didn't get any first overalls, or oh, there we go. Second overall. Jumps 5 spots. It took, I don't know how many rolls did that take, Sean? I think it was something like, it was definitely over 10. Would be certainly interesting. But a couple of things could happen here. Right now, I look at, we just talked about before, like let's say we get to draft day. Or sorry, let's say before draft day. Let's look at the trade deadline real quick, because I think we have that in our, we just talked about it a little bit. So it's being reported that Tyler Seguin, who by the way makes about $9 million, is going to be out for the rest of the season. So that is perfectly in line with the trade deadline that's coming up in 7 days. Well, who else makes $9 million in New Jersey? That's yeah, Luke Hughes. They're not trading Luke Hughes. It's Dougie Hamilton. And I have said for, a couple months now, again, I'm not reporting this. I've just had a hunch. I've known that Dallas is looking for a right shot defenseman. Dougie Hamilton, that could be a perfect fit for him to go play for a team that's going to compete. And they need some offense from the blue line, right? They have Heiskanen, they have Lindell. They're great, but they are looking for another right shot defenseman. Why not Dougie Hamilton? And you wonder what you could get in return for him. Is it a Maverick Bork? Is it just some draft capital? Like, what is it going to take? Do the Devils have to retain? It'll be interesting to see, but it opens up a whole new possibility. Somebody mentioned Nemec in the chat. I'm not sure if this is in response to what I'm saying now. I think after the Olympics, you keep Nemec. You look at what I think the rest of the season, the Devils should be elevating Nemec, give him top pair minutes. And when Luke comes back, if you have to give him top pair minutes with Luke, do it. What's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to fall further in the draft? Let these guys show you what they have. Let these guys show you that they're the future. Because Nemec did that, for me at least, in the Olympics. You saw what he does in an elevated role. I'm not saying he's a number one guy, but I'm saying he has the potential. You see it. And maybe he has just great chemistry with Slovakia. Obviously, that's his team that he's played with for years on end internationally. I think you got to elevate Nemec. I think you have to give him the opportunity, and you have to let him show you what he's got, because having him drop down on that third pair, playing with Brendan Dillon is not the problem. It's just the minutes. It's the opportunity. Let him drive the boat. What's the worst that could happen for the rest of the year? Nothing. Nothing. Actually, if anything, if it doesn't go well, you're dropping further in the standings, giving yourself a better chance at Gavin McKenna. It's a win-win. So I think you have to do that, and I think the Devils should do that. A couple more quick notes, and then we're going to get to your to your questions here. We're almost at our goal, guys. If anybody wants to get us to our goal, two more. Please, we'd be forever grateful. Have the Devils given up on Sheldon Keefe? I think the Devils have just given up on the season. I know, again, I said earlier that they're not going to admit that out loud, but I think there is a sense of dread that everybody's having within themselves. Like, Jesper Bratt's not playing well. I should say he's not playing well, but he can't score, right? You saw how he actually played really well the other day against the Penguins. He made that really nice move. He just can't find his finish. Another breakaway chance for him. He can't score. Nico Hischier can't score. I think everyone's just having a confidence issue. I don't think that Keith has a hard time, talking to the guys and trying to get them motivated. I just think that right now they're not built for his system, and I think that he's trying to squeeze something out of them that's not there. So has he lost them? I don't want to say he's lost them. I just don't know that they're meshing. I don't think it's fair to say that they don't respect Sheldon Keefe as a person. I just don't know that he's getting the most out of them because he's not he doesn't have the equipment to do so. And that's what I think about Sheldon Keefe. Um, what's the purpose of having Fitzgerald and Keefe finish the season? There's a vision with those guys. There's nothing with somebody new. So getting them in now and trying to rapidly speed things up, the trade deadline's in a week, right? Certainly ownership and management are in, conversation about what things should look like. If they didn't get fired after the 9-0 loss that basically sunk the season to the Islanders, they're not getting fired now. So they're going to finish out the season, and then things will be evaluated. Are they going to get let go? Again, I'm 50-50 on that. We'll see. Um, but I certainly think that starting with somebody fresh right now doesn't make much sense because maybe it's Dan McKinnon who just gets elevated and he has a grasp on what's going on here in New Jersey, but I don't think you want him making the ultimate decisions right now either. So you want to get somebody with a fresh perspective on the outside, but that's a summer thing, right? Then you look at what Matthew Darsh did for the Islanders, and certainly he was afforded the opportunity to take Matthew Schaefer first overall, and he's going to break the rookie record overall, not just defenseman. He broke that yesterday in goals. That's insane. But, again, Darsh kind of got a little bit lucky there too. He's made some other nice moves, although we'll see how the Palat thing pans out. But he made some other nice moves. But you want somebody fresh, and that's a summer thing. So starting over right now doesn't make much sense. It could actually hurt them more. Let's see. And for the rest of our notes, we have okay. So do the Devils still need to move some cap space in order to activate Luke Hughes? He'll be activated tomorrow against the Blues. Um, will Hamilton be a healthy scratch again? I doubt it. I think that he's going to continue to play because whether he's in, if they sit him, it's going to hurt his stock. Obviously, if they try to trade him before the deadline, you're risking, running the risk of injury. But I think that teams are still going to want to make sure, they're going to go scout him and make sure that he's still a player. And I think he is still a player. He's been motivated. So I don't see them sitting him. I don't know. I got to look at the numbers. But I think that they could probably just move some players up and down um, from the NHL to Utica and make him fit. I think that'll be fine. They did it before. I know Haminaho was up now. That's a little bit different. But Colton White could go back down to the American Hockey League. Obviously, I think he requires waivers. You don't want to lose him because he's good depth, but I don't see it being a problem. I don't think they have to make a trade, but maybe they will. Maybe they will. I mean, the trade deadline's in 7 days, so it could happen. Um, what else do we have here? Um, so this morning, obviously, the report, this was last night, the report comes out that, and we talked to Dave about this a little bit earlier, that Stamkos is likely to stay in Nashville, but has submitted a list of teams he's willing to go to. The top destinations are Tampa Bay, which, of course, Minnesota, which is interesting, and I'm blanking on the third team, but I wrote it earlier today. Why am I blanking on who that third team was? Um, just trekking here. Oh, Dallas. Right. Okay. So it's Tampa Bay, Dallas, and Minnesota. But there is a fourth team. What is who Stamkos would be willing to go to, not who they think could be in on Stamkos. Now, the Devils have shown interest in Steven Stamkos, but he apparently has said he's potentially willing to waive there. He would just have to see. He wants to go to a contender. It's important to remember that this is a multi-year thing. He's got 2 years left on his contract. So if the Devils were to somehow reel in Steven Stamkos, it's because he would probably love the opportunity to play on a line with Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt. Because if he's not going to go to Tampa Bay, who is more similar to Kucherov in point than Jesper Bratt and Jack Hughes? Nobody on Dallas and nobody in Minnesota. He's going to have to, like he is in Nashville, drive that ship. In New Jersey, he would be getting that same, Kucherov point like support. So that's the way I see it for Stamkos. That's the way I I view it for him. He probably is saying Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt, if I'm not going to go back to Tampa because they don't want to pony up for it, they didn't want to sign me anyway. They didn't want to pay me what I'm worth as a captain. Then yeah, I'll go to New Jersey and try to help them get back to where they were. I could see that happening. Although I think that the Devils are an outside candidate as opposed to an inside. I think it's those other three teams first. Um, again, I kind of added a little bit to what LeBron said. This is something that the Devils have been talking about internally for a while, since November. Um, they would do it in the summer. I don't think now, unless it's a ridiculous deal that they can't pass up. But I think they would do it in the summer if it makes sense. If they can move, Dougie Hamilton, if it's now or at the draft or sometime in the summer, and they free up that money and they can bring a guy in who's, by the way, going to score 40 something goals. I know he's 35, but he's still got it. He's driving the ship now as a 35-year-old. If he doesn't have to drive the ship in New Jersey, it could work. So I get it's not ideal, but I think the Devils truly believe this is a blip on the radar, and they can come back next year and be the team that they wanted to be this year. They just have to make the right moves. And look, outside of Steven Stamkos's play, if he can bring what he's bringing this year to the lineup next year, if he is a New Jersey Devil, you also can't overlook his pedigree, his leadership, the fact that he's won 2 Stanley Cups. They need more adults in the locker room, in my opinion. And certainly it doesn't get more adult than Steven Stamkos. So it would be an interesting acquisition if it were to come to fruition. We will see. And lastly, in the notes, Sean says he's drained. So anything else that we talk about is going to be on the chat. So we have a bunch of questions from chat. Thank you very much for participating today, guys. This was an excellent show, and I'm so excited to get to your questions. And like I said, we got 2 more until we get to our goal, our super chat goal. So if you want to help us get there, support local journalism, we would be very grateful. And if not, that's okay too. But you could support us for free by just hitting the sub button. That would be really helpful to us. And if you have subbed already, thank you so much. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much. We love having you here every Friday. Give us a reason to do more of these throughout the week, please. And thank you. So let's get to some chat questions. And Sean, as I'm reading them on our doc, just pull them up and let's talk to the chat. Let's have a little conversation. So, Kylie Rose 9 asks, "Do you think Nico Hischier will sign an extension with the Devils?" So, this is something that I know I've been talking to Ryan about a little bit. He's like unsure, and I could understand that. I do think he feels a sense of loyalty to the Devils as well, similar to Jack, because again, first overall pick, they named him the captain. He was really young too. I think he really has a passion to win in New Jersey. He's certainly been disgruntled with how the season has gone this year, and that's understandable. Do I see him signing an extension? Maybe not this summer, maybe not July 1. It could be, I could see it being like a Connor McDavid decision where it's going to drag a little bit and we'll see, if it happens. But I think ultimately once, the season gets started next year, let's say we get to December and things are going really well. I could see him signing an extension to stay in New Jersey. I don't think this team is that far off from being a good team. They just have to make the right pivots here. And if Fitzgerald is the guy or it's somebody else, whoever it is, if they do that and Nico Hischier sees that, I do think he'll sign. I think it'll be similar to the Barkov contract because you have to account for inflation, right? The cap is going up, so the salaries are going to go up as well. Is he better than Barkov? Obviously not, but he's a comp. So I do think that it would be the Barkov deal, and we will see, if that happens. But thank you for the question, Kylie Rose. The next question comes from, I can't say that, but I'm going to read it anyway. Can't be getting goalied all season. This team needs to learn how to score. Jesus. And dude, like that's a skill issue. Like there's no other way to say it. That's a skill issue. Jack Hughes, when before he got hurt, scoring all the goals. No one's doing it now. And I certainly agree with you. They have said like we haven't been able to practice. Those condensed schedules have been making it hard. Then they in certain practices had the shooter tutors, so they were trying to fine tune their shooting there. I get it. They need more shooters, right? And you're sick of hearing me saying this, but I've said it every week, and I'll say it again. They shouldn't have got rid of a guy like Tyler Toffoli, who's a natural shooter. They have no other natural shooters now. Nobody. They have Timo Meier, who goes on many different streaks, goal streaks or scoreless streaks, and when he's not scoring and Jack Hughes isn't scoring, sometimes the well dries up for Nico Hischier. Jesper Bratt hasn't scored. Dawson Mercer's not scoring. Like, who's scoring the goals? Don't get me wrong. I think Arseny Gricek's been great this year. Has he been scoring a boatload of goals? No. Could he? I think he will eventually. It just hasn't happened yet. and it's not his fault. He's a rookie, so it happens. But they need certainly natural finishers. They don't have that. And that's why you hear a name like Steven Stamkos still surfacing for the Devils. And it makes sense. As much as you might not like the age, as much as you might not like the fact that he only has 2 years left on his contract, who knows what happens then? I understand that. But this core is not getting any younger. And if he could come in and make a difference with this core, there's no reason why the Devils still can't win next year with the right moves. They can. They just can. And so Stamkos would certainly help there. And that's why you're seeing that name come up. They need shooters. They don't have them. They have a ton of playmakers. They have two-way guys. They have power forwards. They need shooters. Thank you for the question. Up next is Jay Snow, who says, how could Fitz survive this year under any circumstances after this failure? I understand the sentiment. I understand being enraged with the fact that this is a failed season. I have said that he's been too patient to a fault many times. The thing is, ownership invests in certain people. They align with the same vision. I'm not saying that that's how they feel now. I think certainly they're disappointed ownership. I think certainly they're evaluating. I think certainly they're going to take a look at, is he the right guy? And they might look at him and say, look, you got one more shot. You got one more shot to write this. And if you don't write this, we're going to find somebody else who will. I think the fact of the matter is that ownership probably believes they're close to. They know that they have the star power. They know that they have, the right top guys. It's just about getting the support pieces. And if you bring in somebody new, you're almost wiping the slate clean. The only person or people who are untouchable in terms of trade are the Hughes brothers. Everybody else you're moving, and does HBSE want to give up another year of no playoffs in 26-27 for a rebuilding team with a new GM, right? I don't think anybody expected the Islanders to be as good as they are right now. But Darsh, again, was afforded the first overall pick, and a couple of guys are having really good seasons over there. They have Ilya Sorokin, who is a brick wall. He's going to win the Vezina, right? The Devils don't have a Vezina goaltender. They don't have the number one overall pick yet. I mean, they'd have to get lucky. Is there going to be a generational guy like Schaefer at the top with McKenna? I don't think he's generational. I think he's going to be a really good NHLer, but I don't think he's generational. So it's not the same circumstances. So I understand wanting to get somebody new in, and look, I'd be all for it, right? New vision, like get some fresh players in here and shake up the core. Certainly do something that's going to get the attention of that room and say, if your name isn't Hughes, you're not safe. And I'm not saying that in the sense of like we're catering to the Hughes brothers. I just think that obviously Jack Hughes is the guy, and I think they really do believe in Luke Hughes, and they are going to be the face of the team. But if your name isn't Hughes, you're not safe. Somebody's got to shape up, or you're going to get shipped out. And I think that's really what it comes down to is giving him one final shot to make things right, giving him the Don Sweeney treatment if it happens. I could see both things happening. I could see management saying, you got one more shot. This is the Don Sweeney treatment, or you've had one too many chances, you failed, and we have to get somebody new in here. But that means that it's going to come with a whole new set of rules. There's going to be a whole new thing happening here in New Jersey where you might end up having another season of no playoffs, another season where you're going home in April. Is that what HBSE wants? No, they want playoffs. They're going to be renovating the arena next year. You think they don't want to show that off? So that's the way I see it. And that's why I think he could potentially, that's why I'm 50-50, potentially survive. I'm not advocating for it. I could just see it happening. And then another question from Jay Snow says, no one should be untouchable on this team. Unless their name is Hughes. That's it. Unless their name is Hughes. You saw what Jack did. You're not trading Luke. You can't trade Luke. You saw what Jack did. If Jack could stay healthy, he is the guy. He's a top 5 player, top 10 player in the league. They don't grow on trees. You're keeping Jack, which means you have to keep Luke. And I still personally do feel that Luke is going to be a top defenseman. Tough year for him. I get it. Disappointing, sure. But I do think that it's going to be fine for him. And you have to keep Luke if you're keeping Jack. So everybody else, yes. But Jack and Luke are going to be untouchable. Next question from Devil State of Mind. Oh, hi Neil. Thank you for coming in and chatting. They need to sell and make changes to the front office and coaching staff. I could understand that sentiment. Certainly, we just talked about the front office, so I'm gonna just leave that where we did. But with the coaching staff, I agree. Right? I don't think Sheldon Keefe is playing the style that or having his team play the style um that that suits the Devils. They need to be speed and skill. They need to be run and gun. They're a team that thrives off the rush. We've seen them do that before. They're not doing that now. They want to depend on their defense and their goaltending, kind of like the glory years of the Devils. They want to be, the Florida Panthers light. Um, and they're not. They're not equipped to be that, and it's hard to change the entire dynamic to become that. And that's kind of where they went wrong. They were trying to do that, and they're not. They have to lean into their strengths. Look at the Colorado Avalanche. Like that team won a couple years ago, the very same way, and they're not doing that. That's what they're not doing. So I could see changes coming to the coaching staff. I could see that. I could see maybe ownership saying to Fitzgerald, "You get one last coach." Right? He's had two. He's had Ruff, now he's had Keefe. You get one more coach, and now we'll see what happens there. So we'll see. Thank you, Neil. Next up is Westbound on Olympics. Says I can't understand any circumstance where Fitz returns this year in a row, no playoffs, awful. Third year in a row. Sorry, third year in a row, no playoffs, awful drafting and scouting operations. Team is nowhere close to this year and getting worse every year. I understand that. Fully understand that. I do. I do. Typically, managers get three coaches. He's had two. But you're right. And look, there is something else to this too. Like he drafted Luke Hughes, obviously. He drafted Simone Nemec. That's, those are NHL players right now. Um, looking at the rest of the draft, the roster for who Fitzgerald drafted. I mean, Haminaho's a guy. He found Haminaho. He was the first pick of that draft because they didn't have a first round pick. I believe that was the draft, the year that they acquired Timo Meyer. So that was that pick that they traded away. So that's a find, right? And again, it's not all on Fitzgerald. Like, it's not like Fitzgerald's going to the AHL or sorry, the CHL or the NCAA and scouting himself, right? He has a team. He's got to do better hiring, right? He's got to hire better scouts, and certainly that's on him. He's got to have a better plan of action there. But you're right. I understand the sentiment. Like it's the third year in a row of disappointment. Despite last year making the playoffs, it was a quick first round exit. I get it. Um, but again, like I said earlier, like if you change from Fitzgerald, and again, I'm not saying they shouldn't. It just comes with, I think, a whole new set of rules with maybe we miss the playoffs again in 26, 27. And yeah, think about that I think it's like something like $3 million that they're going to be doing in renovations to the Prudential Center. They're going to want to show that off in the playoffs. It's just true. It's business. So that's the only reason I could see it not happening. And the next question from Westbound and Olympics is we drafted Jesper Boquist before Jason Robertson. That's a miss. That's a freaking huge miss. Huge miss. And that's not the first time, that's happened. I know we've had the discussion Nemitz over Cooley. Which one's going to end up being better? Right now, it kind of looks like it could be Logan Cooley, but Nemitz showed well in the Olympics. He's restored some faith and some hope. But you're right. There's certainly been a lot of misses in that department. So I could understand that. I really could. Like the drafting has to improve. All of the guys in the roster now who were drafted and on the roster were previous to Fitzgerald. That has to change, right? The drafting just needs to be better. I'm interested to see what's going to happen with Silyev. He's a guy who I know isn't scoring a ton of goals over in the KHL, but that's not his game. I would like to see what happens when he comes over to North America. He's going to be that stay-at-home defenseman that they hope he can be. Massive man, giant of human. I think he could be still a serviceable player, top 10 pick. He dropped down. Well, he was number 10. He dropped down to 10th. He was projected to be number 3. Let's see what happens with Silyev. That could be another guy that Fitzgerald, won on drafting, him 10th overall. He dropped. Or it could be another massive miss, right? There were other guys that were, behind him that are in the NHL now that are playing well. So we will see. Devil State is back again with another question, and he says, Oh, he meant to ask this to Dave, but I'll answer the question. What about the Devils making a play for Robert Thomas, move Jack to the wing, and play him with Thomas? It's an interesting thought. But who are you moving to St. Louis for Robert Thomas? It would start with your first round pick. Maybe it would be Dawson Mercer, but that's not going to be enough. They're talking about a Quinn Hughes like return. So you're talking Nemec, you're talking Mercer, you're talking a first round pick. And you need another roster player. Gritzik, you giving up all that for Robert Thomas? I mean, I could see that, but we're not addressing the need, right? Robert Thomas is a great player, but they have playmakers. They have two-way guys. Moving Jack to the wing, yeah, maybe you could be a bit more of a scorer, but you'd probably want a scorer more than you want a Robert Thomas. I think Jordan Kyrou is more the fit. He's a multi-30 goal guy. He gets a little bit injured, so I could understand being hesitant on that one, but Kyrou, for me, is more the player to go get Thomas. So that's where I would go with if I was going to St. Louis. I think Kyrou will come in a little bit cheaper. It's still going to be expensive, but he'll come a little bit cheaper than Robert Thomas. But thank you for the question, Neil. Andrew I559 says, I hope the hype of the Olympics and enjoyment Jack and Quinn had together, and Jack's heartfelt love for New Jersey convinced him to sign here as a free agent. I did think this, a little bit. Like, look, I think Jack and Quinn know that for the next 4, maybe 8 years, they'll play together at the international level, right? Obviously for Team USA. So in 2 years, it'll be the World Cup of Hockey, and then in the next 2 years, it'll be the Winter Olympics, and then in the following, consecutive years where those events are going to happen again, they know they're going to play together there. Jack is in New Jersey. Luke is in New Jersey. I think they're going to get that trio on the same team, obviously with Team USA in the future. I think Luke will eventually get there. Um, I just don't see Quinn leaving Minnesota. He loves it there and he's thriving there. And Bill Guerin is a very convincing guy. Now, look, if he can get to free agency or for some crazy reason he doesn't sign there, because I don't see it not happening, and he says, look, Bill, I want to go play with my brothers. Yeah, absolutely bring him to New Jersey. And I think that playing with him at the Olympics probably goes a long way with the nostalgia. I mean, can you call it nostalgia? I don't really know, but like playing with his brother at the Olympics, it certainly does a lot to put the thought, at least in Quinn's mind, put it in New Jersey's corner. I could see that, and you would think that maybe they want to do that every year. Um, but I think that at the end of the day, the Hughes brothers know they at least have the Team USA thing going for them, and I think eventually all three of them will play for that international roster. Am I saying no completely to Quinn coming to New Jersey? I'm never say never, but I think the chances are low at this point. We'll see, but I think it's pretty low. So, and it's a shame. I think that Quinn Hughes would fix a lot for the Devils. I really do. I think he would fix a lot, but I don't know that it happens at this point. I think that they failed to get him, and that's going to hurt them in the long run. And another question from Andrews. He says, I don't think Minnesota trades Quinn even if he doesn't sign. He's still the best defenseman in the NHL. Yeah, I mean, that's probably a good point. Unless they know for a fact at the next deadline he's not going to stay there and kind of, not it's not the same as the Canucks, because I think the Wild are going to be good next year as well. But it's one of those things where you don't want to lose a guy like Quinn Hughes for nothing. It really depends on where they are next year. Like if they're for some reason if they fall off, like I could see them trading him. But if not, like if let's say they're in the hunt and they're close and they have to decide what they're going to do, it's gonna be a tough a tough decision that they have to make with him. So we'll see. I agree. I don't think that they're going to trade him. But again, never say never. Jay Snow says, watching the Devils play hockey makes my beer taste bad. I'm so sorry. What are you drinking? My favorite beer. I'm not much of a beer drinker anymore. I like the clear stuff. It makes me, and I say clear stuff, more of a high noon guy myself now. Like back in my day, I certainly enjoyed a nice tasty beverage. My favorite beer, my beer of choice, was always a white Belgian Hoegaarden. That's my favorite, especially on tap. It's excellent. But watching the Devils makes my beer taste bad is a funny way of putting the Devils have stunk this year. And it makes everything else taste bad, right? It's certainly hard to watch, and I understand. Yeah, it's tough. I get it, and I'm sorry for the your taste buds going sour on on yourself, trying to get enjoyment out of your beverage and you can't. That's tough. I get it, Jay Snow, and I feel for you. At Steve KS says Jack USA hockey team and the Devils were discussed on a local sports talk show in Southeast Alabama, the heart of the SEC college football country. And that's how amazing, right? Uh, I can't I can't say enough how much Jack, or just in general, Team USA winning that game and coming from Jack is great, right? Because it puts New Jersey on the map a little bit now. You know, obviously Jack's going on all these big talk shows. He's become a mega star. Um, it just helps grow the game. And certainly, like I saw a lot of the conversation go towards ticket sales in the Prudential Center. Like now, tickets are going to be more expensive because people are going to want to go see. Like you guys all wanted to go see Jack Hughes play. People pay to watch Jack Hughes play, right? Well, it was Devils fans mostly, but now after that game, it's going to be a lot more people, I think. So you saw it the other night, the first game back, it was a sellout. Maybe people just wanted to get back into the arena for the first time. I'd like to see the trend moving forward. It, let's just say they sell it the rest of the year. They're not in playoff position. It would certainly be because people want to go watch Jack Hughes play hockey. So the growth of the game, seeing them being spoken about on a talk show in Southeast Alabama, who doesn't have a hockey team, that's incredible, and this is what you want. This is why it was so important for USA Hockey to win, because you want more of that across the country. The United States has taken a step forward in solidifying themselves as one of the best teams in international hockey. It was always Canada's, but no more is it going to be definitively Canada's. Now there is going to be competition. And look, throw Sweden in there as well. I know they disappointed at the Olympics, but throw them in there as well. Finland, of course. I loved what Czechia did. I think they really established themselves as at least a threat, not maybe a top candidate, but a threat. Like Germany, Czechia, like these teams are like the expansion of hockey is certainly presented itself at the Olympic Games, and it's great to see. And seeing something like, I had no idea that they were talking about Jack Hughes on a college football talk show, local talk show in Alabama. It's amazing. It really is. It's amazing. And it's really good news for the Devils too. It's great advertisement. Thank you for the question. Westbound and Olympics says people don't realize how detrimental it was losing McLeod, speed, physical, money in the face-off circle. So the player losing him was tough. Yes, the person, you be the judge, but the player losing his skill set, the speed certainly was something that was beneficial for the Devils. The physicality, you saw that in the first round against the Rangers. He was super important in that in that series. And you're right, one of the best faceoff guys in the league. So I had said for a while, if the Sabres were going to continue to be really bad, like his brother in Buffalo is like a carbon copy, just hopefully a better person. And yeah, it's certainly a loss, the player. McLeod was a tough blow to the team. Murdoch the 1280 says regarding a new coach, Todd Nelson would be the best choice. Look into him. Great career. I know a little bit about Todd Nelson. I believe he was with, if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to look this up now. I believe he was with the Islanders for a little bit. I just want to make sure I'm not speaking out of my ASS there when I say that. I know he's with Pittsburgh now. No, he wasn't with the Islanders a little bit. I'm thinking of somebody else, I believe. So assistant coach in Pittsburgh now. Oh yes, I know this. Okay, different Todd Nelson. But he was assistant coach with Dallas. He was the head coach of the Hershey Bears, who have been over the last several seasons the best team in the AHL, and the assistant coach for the Pittsburgh Penguins now, which certainly they wanted to give Dan Hughes the opportunity, but if it went south, like obviously he was a candidate to step up if things didn't work out there. Clearly, it is working out for Dan Hughes, but Todd Nelson, yes, this would actually be a very good choice if they were to move on from Sheldon Keefe. I think that would be an excellent choice. So good name there, good snipe, Mark. I'm butchering that one. So Marduk the 12th. Thank you. 8 by 10ites asks, think it's time to move out from Siegs maybe. I have said do they want to move on from Siegenthaler? I don't think there's like an appetite right now to say, hey, we got to trade this guy. But if somebody came in with an offer and said like, hey, what are you thinking about with Siegenthaler? We need a stay-at-home guy. Like, could you potentially see yourselves moving on from him? and they offer you something that you can't refuse, like I think you should consider that if it's something that is like significant, right? He's got a favorable cap hit. He's not necessarily the Siegenthaler that we saw when he was a shutdown guy next to Kovacevic. That's another player who I'm like, I would like to see what he looks like next year because obviously coming back halfway through the season with his injury, tough. He hasn't looked great. Let's see what happens next year, but that could potentially be a tough contract too. But do you move on from a guy like Siegenthaler? Look, if somebody's calling and they're offering you something of significance, I'm not talking like a top, player, but like a good draft pick or a couple draft picks and a decent prospect, maybe something that you could see yourself flipping for something more significant. Yeah, you do it. You trade Siegenthaler because you have Dylan. You can give Nemitz, or sorry, he's on the left side. So you have Luke Hughes who you can elevate, right? Like, yes, there are ways to plug in the hole for Siegenthaler if he were potentially to be dealt. So it's something you should consider if it comes your way. And I think we got one more here from the chat. Westbound on Olympic says a new GM doesn't necessarily mean next year is a rebuild. Not saying it is a rebuild. Not saying it's a rebuild. What I am saying is that they might come in with a completely different vision, and it might take a year to fully come to fruition. It's let's just say they come in and they trade Timo Meyer. Somehow they get Timo Meyer. Sorry, Jesper Bratt to waive his no move clause. Sorry, I blanked there for a second. They get Jesper Bratt to waive his no move clause. Nico Heischer's on the move, and they bring in these other significant pieces, maybe younger or whatever it is. Like they're going to have a different vision. And you're right. It doesn't mean a rebuild, right? But it's not as seem like I keep looking at the Islanders because they brought in this new GM. He didn't change much, but they didn't expect to be that good. Um, they had the Schaefer, or they have the Schaefer magic. Um, that's the thing is like they didn't expect for some of these things to happen for them. I don't. That's rare. I don't see that happening necessarily for the Devils, right? They'd have to be afforded the luck to win first overall pick in the lottery. And then they'd have to be afforded the luxury of having Gavin McKenna turn into if that's the guy that they pick, or a Stenberg, whoever it is, a superstar, because that's what Matthew Schaefer already is. Like, I can't stress enough how much Matthew Schaefer has changed the Islanders. That's what Quinn Hughes would have done, excuse me, for the Devils. Obviously, I think Quinn Hughes is a better player, so it might have been even that much more for now, at least. I think Schaefer is going to be incredible. But that's really what it is like that team was shape shifted so quickly because of one player, and then they're getting some really good career years out of a guy like Horvat, and Barzell's going well and stuff like that. Like the Devils need that similar luck, and that's just hard to come by. And again, it could happen, right? Next year, new GM, maybe he doesn't, sell everybody. He trades one major piece, wants to evaluate what he has, but everybody is motivated, come back and have, a career year, like kind of like how they did in 22-23, had a career year. Maybe that happens. Sure. I just think it's unlikely, so a new GM in the summer, certainly. Again, I'm not advocating against it. Like that, it's probably necessary, right? Have somebody come in, fresh set of eyes, somebody who's able to be maybe more of a risk taker, somebody who's not going to be too patient to a fault, um, and again, I could see this management being a little bit more patient, wanting to show off those renovations for the new arena, or the updated arena next year, wanting to get this core back to the playoffs. I could see that, right? Not advocating for it, just saying I could see it. We'll see what happens. Um, but you're right. I don't disagree. A new GM doesn't necessarily mean next year is a rebuild, and I'm not saying it is. It could be a retool. Maybe it works out quickly. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it takes some time. You just have to be sure. When you're doing this type of thing, right? Like, let's just say, for instance, they fire Fitzgerald, and they go interview a bunch of candidates, but they don't get the guy they want. Now they're stuck sitting on their hands, right? And again, you have to take these risks if you're going to do it. Um, I just, again, Fitzgerald has come out and said himself, like, this is on me. This is my fault. And I know what it takes. And again, he said that before, and he's been proven wrong. But maybe, ownership feels a different way. We'd have to see. We'll have to see, right? Not, never say never. But for me, let's see what next week brings. Next week's the trade deadline. It's going to be very telling, right? If Fitzgerald is making significant deals that cater towards next year, I think that's going to be an indicator for how secure he feels in his role. He says he doesn't think about that kind of thing. I think everybody in those positions kind of does think about that kind of thing no matter what. But if he's making significant deals for next year at the deadline, that's going to be a tell for where he stands with the organization, right? Let's say he trades for a top six forward, makes a significant trade. I don't think he should be allowed to do it. I don't think he should trade the first round draft pick they have. But let's say he does. I think that's an indicator that okay, he'll be here past the draft. We'll see. And that's going to wrap it up for today, guys. We went a little long there. You guys were very vibrant in this chat. You guys were real lively. You guys brought the heat today. Love to see it. We're back from the Olympic break. This was excellent. I mean, I'm just filtering through how many comments were here. I mean, so many. Thank you so much for participating. Great show today. Thank you to David Pagnotta for coming on and providing some insight. We'll have updates on what's going to happen next week with the trade deadline. We're going to figure out, if we're going to do a pre or a post. I think we got that that poll going in there, and if not, we'll put it on the page, so be sure to check that out. And if you haven't already, guys, please listen, hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much for being here. Let's make this a weekly thing and give us reason to do more shows, right? Be part of the community, hit the subscribe button, be part of the Devil's Rink Report community, and contribute to the chat each week. And we'll be back with more great guests. Maybe we'll have that wretched Ryan Novozinski back on. It's always a good time with him. And show some love for producer Sean. He does great work, right? He's the bells and whistles here. I'm just the guy jabbing on the microphone. So thank you so much for joining us this week. My name is James Nichols, the Devils Beat reporter via New Jersey Hockey Now. And this was the Friday, February 27th edition, the last February edition in 2026 of the Devils Rink Report. And we'll see you guys next week for the trade deadline. Signing off.